Howdy, everybody. Here we are talking about two new trailers for Marvel properties, which have come out in the past couple of days. One being the new sort of quote unquote official first look at Black Widow, and the real first look at Morbius, which I think is a movie that a lot of people forgot was happening until that trailer dropped. And we've got, I imagine, a fairly small amount to say about one and a lot to say about the other. So we're going to open with that first one. So to knock it out, get it out of the way, just so that we can say we talked about it. The Black Widow trailer. I've made my thoughts on the previous trailers sort of clear in the video that I put up back when that released. I was not overly enthused about it. I've kind of softened on it with time. But this one, I think it sort of sells me on it a little bit more. Primarily, just this one gives us more looks at the action and sort of a hand-to-hand practical action, and not necessarily like Natasha jumping from extreme heights in a white suit that looks very odd, and all of it looks very clearly CG. Like, I hope that much more of the movie is leaning into how this trailer looks, where it's got a very practical sort of feel to it. And also Taskmaster looks way better with the hood.
Well, I will say, I mean, I knew that's what most of the movie would be anyway. Like, you're doing Black Widow, doing a spy film, like, the majority of her action is going to be practical. She's not a superpowered, or at least in this incarnation, she's not a superpowered character. In the comics, she's enhanced. She's not like Captain America strong, but she is slightly faster and stronger than the average human, which they never really did in MCU.
Probably for the best.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really add much since she's not, her level of super strength really isn't comparable to Captain America or Spider-Man, or it's hardly even noticeable, really. So, there was really no point in giving her that in these films.
It's probably better for just the audiences if you don't add in that extra sort of detail for as much or as little as it would add to her character.
But yeah, I was more positive than you in talking about this movie from the outset, because as I stated previously, I'm not at all bothered by the fact that they're doing this movie just because we already know Black Widow's dead. As long as it's a good movie, I couldn't care less about that. And I knew that most of the action would be practical, so that wasn't an issue for me. I just wanted it to take itself seriously and not have as much overstuffed humor as we've come to expect from a lot of these movies. And I'm kind of at a point where I really want them to cut that whole got fat thing out of the movie. Like, I don't even want that in the movie. Like, can we?
Really?
We did it with Thor, and like, I don't think Fat Thor is as big a deal in that movie as a lot of detractors of Endgame seem to. But yeah, let's not keep doing fat shaming as a joke. Let's just not do that.
I don't quite read that much into it.
I'm not reading in anything. That's kind of what that is. But yeah, the fight with Taskmaster and Widow on the bridge, I'm really excited to see that. I like the distinct color palette in that scene. That doesn't feel like something that would be in your run-of-the-mill Marvel movie. I really like that choice. It's at night. It's got an orange color palette to it. There's something really striking about that scene, and I'm excited to see it in context in the movie. But yeah, as long as we don't dip our toe too much in humor, I am looking forward to that movie.
Yeah, I share your feelings about sort of the look of the costume. I'm still in the camp that thinks I don't know how I feel about the goggles and the sort of we're doing a skull, but it's not really a skull sort of look. Like, part of me knows that if they went full skull with it, it might look a little too silly. Another part of me feels like that might just be a marketing thing. I don't know, but I'm much more positive on the costume and the general aesthetic of Taskmaster in this sort of look than I am in the first trailer. Trying to think if I have. Well, on the note of it being practical, this is sort of something that is also true of the first trailer and that I didn't really give that credit for, which is I like the amount of location shooting that's going on. Hopefully, like you're saying, this is given what genre and story this is. You'd think it's a given, but you hear enough things and you start to get a little worried about it with these movies. You hope that this is going to be primarily on location, not a green screen heavy movie, like you said. And I don't know. I'm fairly confident that it's not going to go overboard with the humor. We can place bets on if I'm wrong, but I'm not too worried about that being a problem. My main issue is just when we get into third act and is the story going to get too big? And is that going to be an excuse to make the action too big? Like I said, there's really not too much to dig into with this trailer, I don't think. So if you're ready to move on, we can talk about the other one.
Yeah.
You want to start this, or should I?
Morbius.
Yeah. You sound so defeated already.
Yeah, it's a trailer. I hate it so much. For starters,
I'm sorry. I just want to say, like, in a vacuum, to play devil's advocate, it looks fine. It looks like a totally serviceable, unremarkable action movie type thing. The problem is we can't take it in a vacuum. This is the same people who gave us Venom, and it looks just like Venom again.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say before you. Never mind.
Sorry, I apologize. I wanted to briefly give the devil's advocate argument that it's like the trailer itself, as a piece of marketing, is not necessarily a terrible trailer. It's just taking it in the context of what it is.
So yeah, this looks like a more. This looks like Venom with a more consistent tone. We don't have what appears to be the Tom Hardy equivalent of a super goofy, zany performance. But as a result, it's even more kind of bland, I feel. It just looked like a dreary, low budget, kind of stale anti-hero origin film. Venom, Ghost Rider, it feels like that kind of thing. What's even more?
Oh, sorry, you go.
Why I hate this trailer so much is because Sony is now trying to tie this in to MCU Spider-Man. We have Michael Keaton showing up at the end of this trailer in the same exact prison uniform that he was wearing at the end of his post-credits scene for Spider-Man: Homecoming. So that tells you right there. He's Adrian Toomes. We don't need to speculate or pretend like they have him as some other character. That's clearly Adrian Toomes. And the fact that Sony can even skate through and pretend like this is supposed to be in that same continuity is infuriating to me. Because we know Kevin Feige and none of the folks at Marvel had anything to do with them. We know they didn't have anything to do with this movie. So quality control is pretty much out the window. And now they're going to be associated with this potential garbage because I haven't seen the movie yet. I'm not going to pretend like I have. At the same time, my expectations are very, very low. I'm expecting this to be just as bad as Venom, if not worse. So, yeah. And we have a reference to Spider-Man, but this is how lazy this movie is. Spider-Man, the image of him is clearly taken from the promotional still of the Roni suit that was given in a free update for the Spider-Man PS4 game. That image is taken and photoshopped onto a wall behind Jared Leto in the trailer that has Murderer on it, implying that it is in the MCU universe where Mysterio framed Spider-Man for his murder. But they don't. They're so lazy they can't even use the same suit that he was actually wearing during the events of that movie. It's horrendous. And that alone just really, really irks me and kind of reinforces that they will not even go out of their way to try to make that at all coherent or interesting whatsoever. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I feel really bad for Kevin Feige and the folks at Marvel because they had trouble finagling the renewal of the deal in the first place. There was, we did a video on it, those extended period of weeks where they didn't renew the deal. Disney apparently wanted more money, but Feige was able to get that whole thing worked out, situated. So they got another deal going. And I don't know if you saw the interview for the Kevin Feige at that Los Angeles Film School that I sent you.
Yes, I did.
But one of the questions that I wish I was there in person to ask him is, so that whole deal you have going with Spider-Man, given like how there was a bit of trouble getting that deal renewed, what's it been like to work with Sony, and how long do you see this relationship you have with Sony lasting? Do you think you can conceivably keep going and renew for a deal and a deal and another deal, or do you think you'll have to eventually write Spider-Man out of MCU? I would have killed to be able to ask that question, and I wonder what his answer to that question would be. Because that's the big question for me right now, especially after seeing this. I don't know if Sony is in a place where they feel like they can slide Spider-Man out and have him in their own thing, or if they're going to try to have it their cake and eat it too, like it seems like they're doing.
Yeah, so I think, and in any other circumstance, I would say that this is like a conspiracy theory and is mostly baseless, but I feel like that deal, like the fingerprints of that deal having happened are all over this trailer, because, and again, in any other circumstance, I'd say it's silly to assume this. I am willing to bet you that the Adrian Toomes bit is a post-credit scene, or like final 2 or 3 minutes of the movie, and we know that because the final shot of Venom prior to the credits is like in the first trailer for that movie before most of the effects were finished. So it's like the very first glimpses of Venom that we got that were more than just like a couple of very brief shots was showing us stuff from the very, very tail end of that film. I think this movie, because you're right, this movie is very generic looking. The way I describe it is that without all of the sort of Spider-Man tie-ins, it looks like a movie that no one would bother seeing in theaters. Like it would just come and go completely, and I think Sony knows that. And so I think, again, someone could say like, oh, you're reading too much into it, oh, you're being a conspiracy theorist. I think this is what actually happened, given what we know and just how Sony has been proven to operate so far. I think Sony bit off more than they could chew with this movie, and we're like, oh man, we already sunk all of this stuff into a Morbius movie, like we've already finished it, and we're just now like realizing that, maybe people won't actually bother to see this one, and like unlike Venom, who's kind of a household name even among non-comic fans, maybe the Morbius movie is not going to net us a big box office. So let's use the whole MCU Spidey deal as our bargaining chip to be like, all right, if you want to keep Spidey in the MCU, you've got to let us start doing explicit MCU tie-ins in our Sony movies. And so I think getting that poster in the background, I think getting Tombs, like the fact that that poster is photoshopped, like you said, and not an actual poster, I think all of that reeks of all of the actual Spider-Man tie-ins are going to be completely like not related to the story at all, last-minute additions as part of a marketing ploy to get people to see this movie, and their way of making sure that they could do that was like, let us do MCU tie-ins so we'll take Spidey back. I guarantee you that was part of the deal. I'm sure part of it was also just price for the IP and stuff like that, but I think part of it was, oh man, maybe our plan to do Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies might backfire. Let's try and shoehorn some references in here and sort of like to like tie Feige's arms behind his back so he has no choice. I guarantee you that on some level that's what happened behind the scenes. And that when we get this movie, it's gonna be just like Venom was, this completely self-contained thing that has nothing to do with Spider-Man save for basically what's in this trailer. I will not be shocked if what's in this trailer is the only Spider-Man presence or Spider-Man tie-in that this movie has at all.
I wouldn't be surprised about that either. Maybe like I don't. Oh yeah, it is their movie, so they could get away with doing this. I could imagine maybe he's walking past and that J. Jonah news clip is playing on a TV or something.
I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine that J. Jonah in the world that this movie looks like it's set in. I mean, maybe. I mean, hey, this is the same world as Venom, and I didn't think the character of Venom was going to be so goofy, so maybe I'm wrong.
But yeah, the Venom success can be chalked up to his relationship with Spider-Man, and people don't look fondly on Spider-Man 3, but that movie did introduce Venom to a general audience, and there are people who saw Venom in the cartoons, and he's one of their favorite Spider-Man villains. So, and he's, I'm not gonna say he's Spider-Man's Joker, but you look at Batman, you look at Joker. Debatably, Joker was going to do well regardless, just because of the popularity of that character. It didn't even necessarily have to be a good movie. That's how popular Joker is. Obviously, Venom is not quite on that level, but to a much lesser degree, I think that's in large part why that movie was successful.
Hot take? Venom isn't Spider-Man's Joker.
I know that.
He's Spider-Man's Penguin.
I would not go that far. No. I wouldn't put him that low on Spider-Man's totem pole.
No, but in that, like, most people know the Penguin is a Batman villain. Like, he's recognizable. He's not always... He doesn't
Most people know Venom's a Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Venom is to Spider-Man what Penguin is to Batman, in the sense that most people know who they are. They don't always show up. Like, you'll have some notable, like, mainstream adaptations of the character where they're just not there, and yet they're still always kind of on the fringes of the public consciousness and understanding of that character. and they're just recognizable enough that people will go like, yeah, I know who that is, if you make a movie about them. Venom, again, being a more sort of marketable character in this sort of climate than the Penguin is, obviously, and that explains why his movie could even make that much money. But I feel like it's that sort of thing where it's like, people know who this is, and everyone knows, like, they're probably like the second or third guy that people will give you if you're like, hey, name me some of this character's villains. It'll be like Joker, Penguin, maybe Two-Face. And with Spider-Man, it'll be Green Goblin, Doc Ock, and Venom, maybe switch Venom and Doc Ock. And it'll be like, yeah, so they're and Venom, like I said, is more marketable. So Venom really, that movie, all of it, I want to say all the money that movie made was, part of it was just the weird sort of curiosity of like, how do you even do a movie of a Spider-Man villain without Spider-Man in it? And also part of it was just, this is a character who a lot of people know, even if they don't know about him. He kind of looks like Spider-Man. It's always been Venom's thing. Morbius doesn't have that. Morbius would be like doing a Mad Hatter movie for Batman. Which, like,
yeah, he's pretty D, maybe even F level villain.
Yeah. And like, people don't even necessarily, even people who like know Morbius don't immediately necessarily think of him as a Spider-Man guy. Like some people do, I'm sure a lot of people do, but he could just as easily be a Blade guy. And it's like the thing is, like, the concern that people have is not just that this movie might then crib from the MCU as like a shallow means of promoting itself. It's also that now we're in a situation where this movie is like official MCU in that universe, means if we do, like, we're doing Blade, and like, who's to say that this Morbius, if it's not a good character, doesn't like show up in Blade or something Blade related and impact that negatively? But like, more importantly,
that would never happen because Marvel owns Blade, and even though, you know, they're using Spider-Man, I doubt they'd want to pull from this.
Yeah, like that's just an example that came to my mind just then because we're talking about Blade, but like, you're right, they have like full power to just draw the line and be like, no, in that case. But the other issue is also that this means that we're stuck with the Tom Hardy Venom. So like, if we ever want to bring Venom into a Spider-Man story in the MCU, we're stuck with the Venom from that movie. And like, how do you work with that?
Yeah, the Venom that started being Venom without Spider-Man's involvement at all, like, that's so weird.
A Venom who's a good guy, who's this weird, like, his civilian identity is this mostly unthreatening, kind of sad, pathetic weirdo. Well, I mean, that's basically what Spider-Man 3 did, so never mind.
That was terrible.
And like, the one thing that you could maybe see possibly being a silver lining in this is, well, I mean, there's two silver linings. One, I don't want to read too much into, again, just because I'm sure that the addition of that poster was a last minute thing. But the fact that we have that poster there, and we have the acknowledgement that like parts of the public look at Spider-Man as a murderer, that gives at least the faint indication that when we do get back to Spidey in his own movies, we'll like deal with that. Like, again, this movie being this movie and sort of removed from all that, and like Kevin Feige not having any say in like the decisions regarding Morbius, like, take that with a grain of salt. But I do like that as an implication. It's like, okay, yeah, this movie that I guess is in continuity now is acknowledging the Mysterio frame job, and we could take that maybe as a slight indication that once we get back to Peter himself, he's still going to have that issue and it won't be a thing that we solve and deal with off screen.
Or just handle all in that movie. Well, we don't even know when this takes place in relation to Far From Home. We don't know if it's a week, a year, what the time frame is, if they're even thinking that hard about it.
And again, it's unlikely that we'll get any indication in this movie. But the other silver lining is that if the situation that we have is sort of like Morbius and Venom are kinda MCU continuity, but not really. Like, if we use Venom, we have to use quote-unquote the same Venom, in that we have to use Tom Hardy, then that's kind of a get. Because if we're in a situation where, okay, Morbius and Venom are nominally in continuity with these movies, and we kind of have to performatively pretend that they're in continuity, but really not, then I think we might, like best case scenario, end up with a situation where, alright, Kevin Feige has to use this Venom and this Morbius in like a Sinister Six movie or whatever. Like the MCU gets to bring in these guys. Alright, Kevin Feige's got access to Tom Hardy as Venom and Jared Leto as Morbius. He's got two really good actors that he can, hopefully, he and John Watts or whoever is doing the movies where they eventually show up in, can sort of do their own spin on those characters and sort of take two really good actors and get them to like sort of play to a different sort of take. Again, that's best case scenario, but it is a possibility where, alright, we're sort of saddled with these movies in continuity now, but we don't really have to do the same. We don't have to write them the same as their movies wrote them. No one's gonna be all that bothered if we change up the way that characters act a little bit so that people can take them seriously in our movies.
I'll be honest with you, Nick. Well, for one thing, I like Venom as a villain. I really, really do. I don't need him in any future Spider-Man movies. Spider-Man has a large enough road to gallery that, you know, they can do a bunch of other villains and I'll be fine.
Same.
I also don't think that Feige will bother touching their version of Venom with a 10-foot pole. There are plenty of other villains they can use. They've used villains that we haven't seen on the big screen up to this point. Now, I do, like, especially if we go past 3 and we give Spider-Man more than just a trilogy in the MCU, I definitely want them to tackle villains that we have seen before. Mark Hamill as Dr. Octopus needs to happen. That needs to happen. But yeah, I would like to see their takes on the villains that we have seen before. I would like to see Norman Osborn. I would like to, and since he's in MCU and we don't have the at least the core members of the Avengers anymore, I would like to see the Dark Avengers storyline attempted with Norman Osborn. And that's the direction I'd like to see them going. I don't think they'll bother touching Venom or Morbius because they don't really have to. And both those movies, well, I can't say both those movies. Venom was garbage. We have not seen Morbius yet, but I would assume that Feige is already kind of gritting his teeth and is tapping his foot that he even has to tolerate Sony pretending like those movies are in continuity with MCU.
Yeah, you know what, you're right. I said best case scenario was my situation, but the actual best case scenario and what I'm hoping and is most likely to happen is that this is just a weird fluke and the MCU completely disregards these movies entirely.
They definitely will.
Yeah, and Morbius is just this weird non-MCU movie with MCU references in it, and like this never happens again and no one talks about it after this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think even when we finally get that Blade movie that it'll bother referencing Morbius or anything that happens in that.
Yeah, and like if this movie somehow magically manages to pull off what Venom did and makes like a whole crap ton of money, then that might be like Sony's bargaining chip of like, See, we've made 2 of these movies, and however you feel about them, Feige or whoever, they made a ton of money. This would be a lucrative, this would be a positive for the MCU business-wise to associate with 2 very successful movies, regardless of how they were critically received. If this movie makes a bunch of money, I could see that becoming part of the discussion, like Sony being able to hold just the monetary success over Feige's head and being like, come on, rising tide raises all ships. Like, let us in on the party, like, for real, and you can take part in some of this sweet pie. But I don't think that's gonna happen. I think Morbius is, I don't know, like, you'd never say never. This movie still has plenty of time to keep marketing itself, but if this is, like, reflective of what we got, then it just looks like the most generic, unremarkable thing, and I'd really be shocked if this movie, with, like, the way that it looks, with Jared Leto, who is a good performer, but is not really, like, he's not a draw. Like, Jared Leto's not a guy that's gonna get butts and seats, I don't think.
And neither is his character.
Yeah, Morbius is not a name that anybody knows.
I think it's a foregone conclusion that this movie doesn't even come close to making as much money as Venom did.
Yeah, no. Like, the only thing that this movie has is it's got the people who recognize Vulture and the people who are, like, the fanboys who will stop and notice a Spider-Man poster. And for just the regular Joe Schmo moviegoers who maybe don't even remember Michael Keaton was in a Spider-Man movie, literally all you've got is the Marvel logo. And I don't think that's going to be enough to get you butts and seats, same way it wasn't enough for, like, Fan 4 Stick.
And it really, I was floored that they had the gall to say, from the studio that brought you Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, you guys financed those movies, and yeah, like, you distributed them, you own them, but Marvel did all the legwork and actually got those movies made. They handled all the creative decisions. You guys just fronted the paycheck and distributed the movie. Like, don't
stay into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
It's so strange because, like, that's what I thought it said at first because, like, the font is so dark against that black background. I was like, I saw Spider-Man : something. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, this is like a sort of adult-oriented looking movie similar to how Venom was. It's a little weird that you're advertising, like, from the studio that brought you into the Spider-Verse, but hey, it makes sense. A lot of people love that movie. It got you an Oscar, and you can kind of genuinely lay claim to it. Oh, no, wait, that says Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home. You didn't even actually make those movies.
No, you just distributed them and you own them, which is why we don't see those on Disney Plus. They're Sony movies.
And again, just like Fan 4 Stick, this is the exact same move that movie did when it's like, from the studio that brought you X-Men Days of Future Past. Even though no one involved with this movie had anything to do with that movie.
No, that's not really the same thing, but at least the same studio actually made the movie.
Yeah, but I know, yeah, that's true. Like, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it gives me that same vibe, where it's like, here's a thing that people associated with this movie on, like, a executive producing level were kind of sort of attached to, and that was a successful movie that everybody liked, even though this is clearly, like, it's not the same franchise. It's not, like, the creative team is not really the same. It doesn't look anything like that movie, and it doesn't tie in at all, really, but well,
the main reason that they put Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man Homecoming is because they're pretending like it's in that universe.
Yeah. And again, I feel like this is all, like, I don't know, I think the Morbius that we get, like, before those, like, the deal breaks down and then comes back, I think the Morbius we get a couple of months ago does not market itself that way. I think making this movie more potentially profitable, I feel like was genuinely something Sony was thinking about when when the deal sort of like got renegotiated.
I would agree, because the main talking point for everyone who's looked at this trailer is the MCU connection.
Yeah.
If you take that out, I would say this is a movie that looks like a January movie. It looks like a movie that should have been put in January just so that it could bomb and the studio could cry about all the money they lost.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird to even think about it that way, because it's sort of odd in that it's the only sort of big comic book movie that we've got coming for a little while that isn't tied into a pre-existing franchise in some way, where Birds of Prey is like obviously it's got the same Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad, but like outside of the movies, Harley Quinn is recognizably a big DC character, recognizably tied to Batman. So like that movie has the Batman connection the same way that Venom had the Spider-Man connection. Wonder Woman is a sequel to a very successful movie, very well liked critically. Black Widow's an MCU movie. I guess you could say New Mutants is kind of its own thing. But aside from that, Morbius is the only thing that's like a high-profile kind of release coming out for a little while that's not really attached to a pre-existing successful movie. Like, it's in the same universe as Venom, but that story doesn't seem to tie into this one at all.
That's not really true. I know this movie may not be on your radar, and maybe you're not even excited for this movie, but we did get a new trailer for Bloodshot.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. And as far as, like, if you wanted to maybe talk about that trailer too, but I haven't watched it yet, so... But yeah, like, that's not on too many people's radars, like you mentioned. So, like, that's sort of on a level of, like, it's not attached to anything, and no one...
That's a March release. I do expect it to make its money back, but yeah, I don't picture that doing any well than Upgrade did, which should have done better because that was a great freaking movie, and yeah.
Yeah, and also, like, appropriate comparison again to this movie, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of people don't even see Bloodshot knowing it's a comic book movie, as opposed to this one, which opens with the big Marvel logo that's got tons of comic book panels, so you can't see this trailer and not know that it's based on comic books. But yeah, like this Morbius kind of looks like it exists in this weird gray area where you're right, without the MCU tie-ins, no one would be talking about it outside of just like, oh,
hey, this looks like a more modern Dracula Untold.
Yeah, and again, like, outside of the connection of, okay, it's got Sony's name on it, and people know that Sony did Venom, and Venom made a lot of money. But that's still sort of like a weird limbo area. It's just, I don't know.
That movie was kind of arguably in the gutter, critically.
Yeah. And, like, a lot of people saw it, but I wonder how many, like, regular people... Again, I always want to make sure when we talk about these things to look at them from the perspective of people who aren't online all the time, people who aren't following, like, film pundits who talk about this stuff daily. Just, like, regular, like, sees 5 to 6 movies a year in theaters, average Joe Schmo moviegoers. I wonder how many of those guys saw Venom and remembered that they saw it.
Yeah, I try to forget about it immediately. I'm into this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a weird situation because we're going at this like we just hit the 40-minute mark of this video, and I'm in this situation where I feel like we're talking about this movie way more than it deserves.
Yeah,
it's forced itself into this really interesting position by way of these shallow references because it's got so many possible implications for this franchise that we actually care about, whereas the movie itself really just looks like this generic, unremarkable movie.
This wasn't planned at all, but since we did both see it, I do want to talk just a little bit about the Birds of Prey trailer.
Yeah, we might as well.
So what did you think of it?
As someone who has been like on the fence at best about this movie up to now, I feel like this trailer, I can't tell you what it is about it. Maybe it's just between this trailer and the last one, I've kind of tried to get myself more into the mindset of some friends of mine who are really excited for this movie. I'm kind of digging it. Like, I can get into it now more than I could before, where it's like this movie is definitely going for a very particular aesthetic, and it is not the same aesthetic as Suicide Squad, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way in the same way that movie's aesthetic did. But there are a lot of people that I know and respect and like am friends with who are really into like the kind of tone and visual identity that this movie has. It's a very intentionally gaudy, very colorful kind of, not Hot Topic, but kind of, I don't want to be like too uncouth about it, but almost kind of like drag show aesthetic to this movie. And like, if I can get myself into the mindset to appreciate that, I can see how it's like, yeah, this doesn't really look like anything else that we're getting from this genre. And it does look like its own thing, and I can really appreciate that. And it's like, it's a movie. Suicide Squad kind of looked like a movie that was trying too hard to please a certain crowd. This movie doesn't look like it's worried about pleasing anybody, and that, I think, is what gets a lot of people excited about it. My sister is a big Cassandra Cain fan, and so I also have her sort of like her leaning over me in spirit, being like, oh my god, what did they do to you, Cassie? So that element of it, I don't think I'll ever be able to fully get behind. But I don't know what it is. I'm kind of in this place where I'm like, you know what? I think this looks like a movie where I'll be able to sit down with it and have a good time, and it'll be a fine experience at the theaters, and I may even love parts of it, so I can get behind it now.
Yeah, I'm not really yet. And it is weird to like be watching Harley Quinn's show right now and loving it, and it's become my favorite thing to come out of the DC Universe streaming service. And then look at this trailer, and so popularity-wise, Harley Quinn has definitely become DC's Deadpool.
Yeah,
she's very, very popular. Even the average layman could probably tell you who she is at this point. But this trailer starts out really weird, and I hope we don't literally have her doing the fourth wall thing in the movie. Especially if it's gonna sound like that, because if you pay attention, if you really listen, I don't even know if you really have to pay attention, but first time I was listening to watching the trailer, I'm like, why is she talking in her regular Aussie accent? Like she's talking into her Aussie accent. Oh wait, hold on, I told this all wrong, and then goes back talking into Harley. I'm like, that's weird. I hope nothing like that happens in the actual movie, and she stays in character the whole time. That was.
It doesn't even sound Aussie to me. It sounds like
Australian.
I know that's her natural accent, but it doesn't sound like her natural speaking voice to me. It sounds like she's trying to do the Harley voice and just getting
failing
really wrong. Yeah, it's like you did a whole movie with a specific voice for this character, and suddenly it sounds like you're going like way overboard. What? Yeah, I picked up on that even.
And I will say this, and it is kind of ironic bringing up the Deadpool comparison, because she is kind of, in a very similar way, what Ryan Reynolds was to the first Deadpool, in that she was instrumental in getting this movie made. I'm pretty sure she's an executive producer on it. And she like had this idea. She pitched it to Warner Brothers as, let's do a big group female action movie, Harley Quinn. I think it would be really fun to do, and she shepherded a lot of this. So a lot of what we're seeing on screen can be equated to Ryan Reynolds and him working really hard to get Deadpool made, which I think is really kind of interesting when you look at just how similar those characters are in terms of their status and their respective franchises.
Yeah, and I guess it might say something about like those characters, whether that's just Deadpool and eventually Harley aping from Deadpool, or both of them in different ways, like being the kind of characters that you can only sort of get right, or at least sort of get to be the focus of a movie if you've got the person playing them being that passionate about it. Maybe, I don't know. But there's also sort of, the angle of I've slowly this is still kind of an issue for me just conceptually. Like, why is this a Birds of Prey movie and not a Sirens thing? Like, I know that we like to make Harley a straight up good guy in like all but name whenever we can, just because like Deadpool, she's so marketable. But I don't know. It's still something weird to me. It's like someone who's not even
that line where whenever we break her away, like the second we broke her away from Joker in the comics, we immediately made her an anti-hero.
Yeah, and like I'm fine with that, but it's still sort of weird. It's like it's just, again, with the way that we're characterizing Cassandra Cain, and it's just like, why these characters? Like, why, like, do your Harley Quinn movie fine, and like, again, this tone is pretty appropriate for Harley as a character. These other characters, why is the Birds of Prey like a big enough name that you kind of have to take a bunch of characters and basically do like Birds of Prey in name only as your Harley Quinn vehicle? I don't know if that's necessary.
Maybe not. I mean, I understand why you would use characters. Well, see, that's the thing. Comic book Black Canary, in my opinion, probably could easily solve this whole situation without Harley or anyone else here. Like, she's a really good fighter, and her powers are pretty strong. So, this whole Black Mask is chasing them thing and wants them dead. I feel like Black Canary could handle that pretty easily. I get why you wouldn't bring someone like Poison Ivy in, because she could handle that very easily. Yeah, maybe it would make more sense to bring in someone like Catwoman, or like the lesser, like non-powered female characters makes sense. So I guess that's kind of the rationale there. But yeah, I do understand like diehard Birds of Prey fans being a little miffed that the roster has changed so much just to play Harley Quinn. It's a little bit of a different situation, but it's kind of the Wolverine to the X-Men thing, where it's like we're gonna put the majority of the other crew that's supposed to be front and center in the background, just so we can focus on the most popular person.
Yeah, and like, to be fair, that's not exactly a one-to-one comparison, because like this,
No, it's not.
yeah, the problem here doesn't seem to be so much the X-Men thing of like they're too much in the background. This does, like, it does look like Harley Quinn's movie, but it looks like more of an ensemble piece than most of the X-Men movies tended to get, at least. So the problem here isn't necessarily the problem that it usually is, which is that it's the Harley Quinn show, it's her world, and everyone else is just living in it. The problem here looks like why choose these guys? Like, why choose these guys for this movie?
Well, I think I just laid out why. It's because they're all female characters, and for the most part,
Right, but I mean, like, we've got female villains. Even if you don't want to do Gotham City Sirens, you've got other characters you can pick from. I don't know, like, Birds of Prey, because if the Birds of Prey were like a really big, popular, like, mainstream superhero team, then I would totally get it. But again, I don't know, as like a marketing decision, like,
And
to
I don't
avoid.
really think they were thinking marketing because, again, a lot of this movie conceptually came straight from Margot Robbie. She
Yeah, that's
talked about
true.
she read Birds of Prey comics and thought it would be cool to do a movie with some of them and Harley Quinn. So it's her idea, and she wasn't really thinking marketing so much as this would be cool to do.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But yeah, I'm barely even on the fence. I will. I mean, I kind of see every comic book movie, whether I'm excited for it or not, just to be part of the conversation. And you know, I'll see it at least once. I hope it's good. Hope I enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm confident at this stage. I'm confident that, like, loyalty to source material aside, that Black Widow and Birds of Prey will at least be, worst case scenario, pretty good movies. I'm fairly confidently saying that at this point. Morbius, I think pretty good is best case scenario for that movie.
I'll be surprised if it's not boring and I don't hate it.
Yeah, so we shall see. Like, I've legitimately, I'm sure that most of, like, the stuff that actually looks cool about Morbius is, like, last 5 seconds. Not last 5 minutes, sorry. Like, again, because Sony, and it's not even just Venom, like, they keep doing this with their Spider-Man properties. They keep throwing in the literal last shot of the film into marketing, and I don't know why they do that. I'm willing to bet you the last shot of the movie, or one of the last shots, is him turning toward the camera in full Morbius mode.
Or we'll eventually see it in one of the future trailers.
Yeah.
But I mean, aside from Amazing Spider-Man 2, that doesn't really tend to bother me.
No, but it doesn't bother me as a practice. What bothers me about it is that now that I've picked up on it, it's really difficult to be excited about any of that stuff in their trailers, because I'm constantly wondering, all right, am I actually going to get to see this in the movie as a thing, or is it just going to be a tease in the last couple of minutes?
And you know what? It would be a non-issue if those movies were great.
Yeah. It's like, if Venom was just a solid movie on its own, then I wouldn't care. But it's like, you market part of your movie as Venom being a vigilante and, like, fighting criminals, and, like, I don't necessarily care for Venom outside of the role of antagonist, but fine, whatever. I'm down for that movie. And then that movie is the last scene of a film. That just feels so cheap to me. But yeah, that aside, I don't know. I'm not too surprised that we wrung almost an hour out of this, but yeah, this is going to be an interesting year for the genre. We shall see what happens.
We shall see.
And like we just talked about this off camera, we are very soon going to be in a situation where both of us are going to be pretty busy. You in particular won't be available to do these for a little while. So just letting everyone know before we sign off that this may or may not be the last video that we do together for a couple of months. And even then, like going forward up until at least April, like other big trailers, other big marketing stuff that comes out that's worth talking about, you're probably just going to hear from me and my reactions on that. It'll be a while before Malik gets the chance to input stuff on that necessarily. I'm going to keep him updated when big stuff drops, but as far as stuff on the channel, you're probably just going to hear from me, and even that will be a little bit more sporadic than it has been for the past couple of weeks. So I'm sure I'll make an update video talking about where everything's going to be, but just thought I'd add that here as a little in tag.
Yeah, and when Nick sends me stuff while I'm out to sea, well, at least lets me know what's going on. I'm not going to be able to watch any trailers, unfortunately, because my ship blocks all like media platforms outside of email. So I won't be able to watch any YouTube videos. We can't watch Netflix or Disney Plus or anything while we're out there. So the only thing I'll have access to is what Nick tells me and what he describes to me. So he can definitely feel free to mention what I think based off what he tells me. I won't actually be able to watch anything while I'm gone. Now, we come back, I think, for either a day or two sometime in February, after the release of Birds of Prey, I think. And I am going to try to go and see that movie at least once, and hopefully get together with Nick so we can do a quick spoiler cast on that. But aside from that, you guys will not hear from me on the channel again, probably until about a week after New Mutants comes out. That's supposed to be when we return from another underway, and I definitely want to talk about that movie with Nick, especially if it's good. Yeah, that's kind of what my schedule is looking like.
All right, so hope all you guys look forward to hearing that when the movie comes around, and all the stuff that I'll be doing in the meantime. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.